If you think America's economic story is simply inflation is down, so everything is fine, you're watching the wrong screen. The real question heading into 2026 isn't whether the CPI headline looks better on paper. It's whether everyday life actually becomes cheaper. Rent, groceries, insurance, healthcare, interest rates. Those are the numbers that matter to voters, not the ones scrolling across a television chyron. No noise, no spin, just analysis. President Trump is now back on the road selling a confident promise. 2026 will be an economic boom year. The message is designed to feel clean and inevitable. Inflation is easing, real wages are up, tariffs are bringing in massive revenue, more tax relief is coming, more jobs, more money staying in Americans' pockets. It's framed as momentum already in motion, as if the hardest part is behind us. But a boom is not a slogan. A boom is an outcome. And the distance between a slogan and an outcome is where economic reality usually intrudes. Start with the most basic misunderstanding driving this entire conversation. Inflation going down does not mean prices go down. It means prices rise more slowly. If grocery bills surged for 3 straight years and then the pace of increase cools, households are still paying the new, higher price level. That pain doesn't disappear just because the rate of change looks better. This is why governments can celebrate disinflation while voters still feel trapped. It's not because the data is fake. It's because lived experience lags behind headlines. This gap between macro indicators and daily life is the fault line Trump's messaging is trying to cross. Officials point to charts. Voters point to receipts. When those two realities diverge, politics becomes a contest over which reality deserves trust. That tension is amplified by another uncomfortable truth. The economy is not one thing. It's several economies running at the same time. Stocks can soar while renters fall behind. Corporate profits can surge while families cut spending. Asset values can rise even as wages barely keep pace. So when you hear the word boom, the only honest response is to ask, boom for whom? And through which channel? That question leads directly to tariffs, because tariffs sit at the center of the 2026 boom narrative. The claim is simple and politically powerful. Tariffs are bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars. They are funding government priorities, and they are doing it without reigniting inflation. The framing suggests a rare policy win, revenue without pain. But tariffs are not free money. Tariffs are a tax. The only debate is where the cost lands and how visible it is. In the real economy, tariffs are collected at the border, usually from importers. From there, the cost moves through the supply chain. Some of it gets absorbed by companies. Some of it gets passed on through higher prices. Some shows up as lower wages, fewer discounts, or reduced choice on store shelves. The burden is spread out and delayed. That diffusion is what makes tariffs politically attractive. You can raise revenue without mailing voters a tax bill. This is why tariffs work so well as a storytelling tool. Revenue is easy to count. Costs are harder to trace. When the White House says tariffs are painless, what it is really doing is emphasizing what is visible and downplaying what is dispersed. The cost doesn't vanish, it simply becomes harder to identify. That same logic explains the rollout of the $1,776 Warrior dividend. The number itself is not accidental, it's symbolic. It ties a check to national identity. It turns a fiscal decision into a patriotic gesture, and it shifts attention away from the hardest question in economics. Where does the money actually come from? Once policy becomes checks with meaning, incentives change. Benefits that photograph well begin to dominate. Budget mechanics fade into the background. The check becomes the headline. The funding becomes the footnote. Even in friendly media discussions, the contradiction occasionally breaks through. At one point, a blunt question emerges. When did the party of supply-side economics start juicing demand like Democrats? Because checks are demand. They can help real people, but they are not neutral. Without an increase in supply, especially in housing and healthcare, demand-side support can keep prices elevated. You cannot spend your way out of a supply shortage. That's not ideology, that's arithmetic. This is where the boom narrative quietly runs into its first structural risk. If growth is being sold through visible benefits funded by opaque revenue, the system becomes fragile. Which brings us to the second risk that receives far less airtime: the Supreme Court. If the court narrows the authority used to impose certain tariffs, the impact goes far beyond trade policy. It strikes at predictability. Businesses can adapt to policies they dislike. What they cannot adapt to is uncertainty about whether the rules themselves will survive. If companies do not know whether tariffs will remain in place, whether refunds will be required, or what policy replaces them, investment decisions slow. Hiring pauses, projects get delayed, confidence erodes. This matters because the boom story treats tariff revenue as stable, but revenue that depends on unresolved legal authority is not stable. It is conditional. Markets understand this, even when political messaging ignores it. And markets price uncertainty quickly. The third pressure point is monetary policy. In the discussion surrounding 2026, there is a recurring theme. The Federal Reserve has been too quick to assume prosperity causes inflation, and a new chair could change that philosophy. Translated into plain language, there is pressure for easier money. Lower rates can help. There is no denying that. But in a supply-constrained economy, rate cuts do something predictable. Asset prices respond first. Wages respond later. This is how you end up with booming markets and frustrated households at the same time. It is also how optimism on television turns into cynicism at the kitchen table. This is why the fight over the Fed chair matters far more than most viewers realize. It will shape whether the next phase of growth is broad-based or asset-driven. A boom that shows up first in portfolios but not paychecks is politically toxic, even if it looks impressive on charts. Put these pieces together, and the underlying strategy becomes clear. The promise of a 2026 boom is not just an economic forecast. It is an expectations campaign. Lock in belief early, and you buy time. But if households do not feel relief, belief curdles into distrust. And distrust spreads faster than optimism ever does. The Reagan comparison that often appears in this narrative is emotionally effective, but historically selective. The early 1980s were defined by a different debt structure, a different housing baseline, and different demographic tailwinds. Today's America carries heavier structural weight. Debt service costs are higher. Sensitivity to interest rates is greater. And the housing crisis is baked into the system. A real boom now requires affordability repair, not just growth. This leads to the standard that actually matters. A 2026 boom is real only if Americans feel their lives get easier to afford. Not just slower inflation, actual relief. Rent growth that people notice slowing. Healthcare costs that stop sprinting. Wages that beat the price level long enough for households to rebuild savings instead of just treading water. If the plan is tariffs funding checks, remember that tariffs are a tax with hidden incidents, and checks are demand. Without supply growth, that combination risks keeping prices high. If the plan is rate cuts, remember that markets move faster than paychecks. And if the plan is confidence, remember that confidence collapses when reality refuses to cooperate. Debt and bond markets quietly enforce these limits. When interest costs rise, policy flexibility shrinks. Tariffs look attractive because they can be framed as external revenue. But if courts constrain tariff authority, uncertainty rises. When uncertainty rises, yields rise. When yields rise, mortgage rates rise. And when mortgage rates rise, the boom stops feeling like a boom. This is the pipeline from Washington to your monthly payment, and it is far more powerful than any campaign speech. Housing makes this impossible to ignore. If mortgage rates fall but prices remain elevated, payments stay brutal. If rents rise more slowly but never fall, relief feels invisible. If insurance and property taxes keep climbing, ownership still feels like a treadmill. This is why macro victories often fail politically. People do not vote on the rate of change, they vote on the level. To be fair, real tailwinds do exist. If inflation expectations continue to ease, long-term rates can come down. If energy remains stable, household budgets breathe. If tax policy meaningfully lifts middle incomes and small businesses, take-home pay improves. But tailwinds only become a boom if they translate into lived relief. And that translation requires supply, not just stimulus. So here is the bottom line. A 2026 boom is possible, but not by slogan, not by symbolism, not by pretending lower inflation means lower prices, not by building the story on revenue that may not survive legal scrutiny, and not by relying on monetary policy to solve problems created by structural shortages. No noise, no spin, just analysis. People do not trust charts. They trust experience. If the checkout line does not improve, belief collapses. And once belief collapses, every positive report sounds like propaganda. That is the real risk ahead. Not a missed boom, but a deeper break between numbers and trust. And that is the question that matters most as 2026 approaches. Do you believe an economic boom can be real if housing and healthcare remain expensive? Or is this simply better headlines layered over the same high-cost American reality?